Thanks for clicking. Hi there, I'm Stephanie and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to jump into step 5 in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you are not into Alcoholics Anonymous, that's okay too. What we're trying to do here is to share our experience, strength, and hope with each other so that we can help each other avoid drinking. And whatever that means, it might mean take some of this and leave the rest behind. It might mean just listen to this girl drone on and disagree with her. Either way, let's be nice to each other. Go ahead and talk to me in the comments. My sobriety date was March 9th, 2021, which means I stopped drinking on March 8th, 2021. And I had one whole year through the program before it actually stuck. I was court ordered the program, and that's why I was able to stay, because this stubborn girl is not going to be told what to do. So thankfully, Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. And today we're going to dip into step 5 so that you might be able to incorporate these skills, tools, and steps into your life to help stop that drinking obsession. Yes. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Did you hear that? Step 5 is basically you admitting all your wrongs to whatever higher power you believe in, yourself, and one other human being. This might remind you of the old Catholic confessional, and there is something great to glean from many religions that we can then incorporate into our lives without actually believing in said religion. I'm an atheist, I'm an agnostic, and I am spiritual. If that makes sense. It makes sense to me. So I'm going to read step 5 in the book of 12 Steps and 12 Traditions so you can follow along at home or just try to listen and absorb some of this wisdom. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5, but scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. AA experience has taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problems and the character defects which cause or aggravate them. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, if we have come to know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. Now, I will pause there from this book and let you know that that is a seriously long run-on sentence, and I agree with you. This book was written a long time ago, but we're going to take what works and leave the rest behind. Continuing. So intense, though, is our fear and reluctance to do this, so that many AAs at first try to bypass step 5. We search for an easier way, which usually consists of the general and fairly painless admission that when drinking, we were sometimes bad actors. Then, for good measure, we add dramatic descriptions of that part of our drinking behavior which our friends probably know about anyhow. But of the things which really bother and burn us, we say nothing. Certain distressing or humiliating memories we tell ourselves ought not to be shared with anyone. These will remain our secret. Not a soul must ever know. We hope they'll go to the grave with us. Yet, if AA's experience mean anything at all, this is not only unwise, but it is actually a perilous resolve. Few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on step 5. Some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. Even AA old-timers sober for years often pay dearly for skimping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, and depression. and how unconsciously seeking relief, they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Everybody had to confess his own. This practice of admitting one's defects to another person is, of course, very ancient. It has been validated in every century, and it characterizes the lives of all spiritually centered and truly religious people. But today, religion is by no means the sole advocate of this saving principle. Psychiatrists and psychologists point out the deep need every human being has for practical insight and knowledge of his own personality flaws, and for a discussion of them with an understanding and trustworthy person. So, for as alcoholics are concerned, AA would go even further. Most of us would declare that without a fearless admission of our defects to another human being, we could not stay sober. It seems plain that the grace of God will not enter to expel our destructive obsessions until we are willing to try this. What are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of that terrible sense of isolation we have always had. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered that feeling that we didn't quite belong. Either we were shy and dared not draw near others, or we were apt to be noisy good fellows, craving attention and companionship, but never getting it, at least to our way of thinking. There was always that mysterious barrier we could neither surmount nor understand. It was as if we were actors on a stage, suddenly realizing that we did not know a single line of our parts. That's one reason we loved alcohol too well. It did let us act extemporaneously, but even Bacchus boomeranged on us. We were finally struck down and left in terrified loneliness. When we reached AA and for the first time in our lives stood among people who seemed to understand, the sense of belonging was tremendously exciting. We thought the isolation problem had been solved, but we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered many of the old pangs of anxious apartness. Until we had talked with complete candor of our conflicts and had listened to someone else do the same thing, we still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and higher power. This vital step was also the means by which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven, no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on this step with our sponsors or spiritual advisors that we first felt truly able to forgive others, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all-round forgiveness was desirable. But it was only when we resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we'd be able to receive forgiveness and give it too. Origami break time. Here's a little crafting break, a couple minutes to fold some origami with me. Paper cranes are on the menu today. But if you're not into that, go ahead and just grab a drink, non-alcoholic of course, a nice snack, something healthy, or if you prefer something gluttonous, it's up to you. Small treats and treasures are how we reward ourselves daily. Now, folding paper cranes can take some getting used to, but over time I found that this is a great meditation practice for me to put some intention somewhere on paper other than writing words. I folded 250 paper cranes while I had the intention of adopting a sweet baby. At the 250 point, he came along and blessed me with his presence. I turned his paper cranes into a beautiful mobile over his crib, and it's still there today over his race car Batman bed. I hope you can fold with me sometime. If not, just sit back and relax. It's almost over and we have some more reading to do. Note my veiny hands. When I raise them above my heart, my hands look smooth. But when I lower them below my heart, they look veiny. Thank God I was never an IV needle user. It would have been too easy. Almost there. It's actually quite fun and quite easy if you keep up the practice. Paper cranes for life for me. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Therefore, our first practical move toward humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. No defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is, but we shall have to do more than see. The objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. All of us saw, for example, that we lacked honesty and tolerance, that we were beset at times by attacks of self-pity or delusions of personal grandeur. But while this was a humiliating experience, it didn't necessarily mean that we had yet acquired much actual humility. Though now recognized, our defects were still there. Something had to be done about them, and we soon found that we could not wish or will them away by ourselves. More realism and therefore more honesty about ourselves are the great gains we make under the influence of step 5. As we took inventory, we began to suspect how much trouble self-delusion had been causing us. This had brought a disturbing reflection. If all our lives we had more or less fooled ourselves, how could we now be so sure that we weren't still self-deceived? How could we be certain that we had made a true catalog of our defects and had really admitted them, even to ourselves? Because we were still bothered by fear, self-pity, and hurt feelings, it was probable we couldn't appraise ourselves fairly at all. Too much guilt and remorse might cause us to dramatize and exaggerate our shortcomings. Or anger and hurt pride might be the smokescreen under which we were hiding some of our defects while we blamed others for them. Possibly, too, we were still handicapped by many liabilities, great and small, we never knew we had. Hence, it was most evident that a solitary self-appraisal and the admission of our defects based upon that alone wouldn't be nearly enough. We'd have to have outside help if we were surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves. The help of God and another human being. Only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing, only by being willing to take advice and accept direction, could we set foot on the road to straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility. Yet many of us still hung back. We said, why can't God, as we understood him, tell us where we are astray? If the Creator gave us our lives in the first place, then he must know in every detail where we have since gone wrong. Why don't we make our admission to him directly? Why do we need to bring anyone else into this? At this stage, the difficulties of trying to deal rightly with God by ourselves are twofold. Though we may try at first be startled to realize that God knows all about us, we are apt to get used to that quite quickly. Somehow being alone with God doesn't seem as embarrassing as facing up to another person. Until we actually sit down and talk about what we have so long hidden, our willingness to clean house is still largely theoretical. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. The second difficulty is this: what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his or her direct comment and counsel on our situation, and there can be no doubt in our minds what that advice is. Going it alone in spiritual matters is dangerous. How many times have we heard well intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken? Lacking both practice and humility, they had deluded themselves and were able to justify the most errant nonsense on the ground that this was what God had told them. It is worth noting that people of very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they feel have received from God. Surely then, a novice ought not lay himself open to the chance of making foolish, perhaps tragic blinders in this fashion. While the comment or advice of others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than any direct guidance we may receive while we are still so inexperienced in establishing contact with a power greater than ourselves. Our next problem will be to discover the person in whom we are able to confide. Here we ought to take much care, remembering that prudence is a virtue which carries a high rating. Perhaps we shall need to share with this person facts about ourselves which no others ought to know. We shall want to speak with someone who is experienced, who not only has stayed dry, but has been able to surmount other serious difficulties. Difficulties perhaps like our own. This person may turn out to be one's sponsor, but not necessarily so. If you have developed a high confidence in them and this temperament and problems are close to your own, then such a choice will be good. Besides, your sponsor already has the advantage of knowing something about your case. Perhaps, though, your relationship to them is such that you would care to reveal only part of your story. If this is the situation, by all means do so, for you ought to make a beginning as soon as you can. It may turn out, however, that you'll choose someone else for the more difficult and deeper revelations. This individual may be entirely outside of AA, for example, your clergyman or your doctor. For some of us, a complete stranger may prove to best be. The real test of the situations are your own willingness to confide and your full confidence in the one with whom you share your first accurate self-survey. Even when you've found the person, it frequently takes great resolution to approach him or her. No one ought to say the AA program requires no willpower. Here is one place you may require all you've got. Happily, though, the chances are that you will be in for a very pleasant surprise. When your mission is carefully explained and it is seen by the recipient of your confidence how helpful they can really be, the conversation will start easily and will soon become eager. Before long, your listener may well tell a story or two about themselves, which will place you even more at ease. Provided you hold back nothing, your sense of relief will mount from minute to minute. The dammed up emotions of years break out of their confinement and miraculously vanish as soon as they are exposed. As the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes its place, and when humility and serenity are so combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Many an AA, once agnostic or atheistic, tells us that it was during the stage of step 5 that they first actually felt the presence of God. And even those who had faith already often became conscious of God as they never were before. This feeling of being at one with God and man, this emerging from isolation through the open and honest sharing of our terrible burden of guilt, brings us to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps toward a full and meaningful sobriety. Step 5 is hard. You want to write down Tell your higher power and talk to another person about all the things you've done wrong in your life. That's a tall order. I'm not going to go over my list, but it's long. And then when I went to go make amends later, most of it turned out to be amends to myself. A lot of the things that I did, there were any actual victims. A lot of the things I did didn't actually have victims other than me. I did a lot of bad stuff to myself. And so as we move forward, step 5 is something to embrace. And it's something that may come slowly. And it's important to find somebody to talk to about the things on step 5. Because like the passage read, once you put these burdens out there and you take them off you and share them with another person, it frees you. It frees you from the shackles of burden and shame and guilt. I highly recommend writing this stuff down and going through all of the mess of the things you've done wrong, of what you can remember. And take your time in finding somebody to share this with. This is important information and it's valuable information, but it can be weaponized quite easily in the wrong hands. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous is anonymous. Sometimes telling a stranger is the easiest. So go online to find a meeting, or go online to find an in-person meeting, or meet me back here sooner than later, and we can discuss more about the principles and steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a perfect opportunity to take a side note to say I'm sorry to one of my friends that I don't think I've made amends with. I'm sorry, Noelle. I'm sorry that during our friendship, I probably hurt you. I know that I leaned on you, though you could not lean on me as much as I should have been there. I'm sure I've hurt you. I'm sure I flaked on you. I'm sure that I was selfish and put the alcohol before you at some point, and I'm sorry. This is my official. I'm so sorry for jeopardizing our connection because I couldn't get my handle on my drink and I couldn't be honest with myself and therefore you. I'm sorry for that. My amends are I've changed. I no longer have this black and white thinking that if you do one thing I don't like, I have to cut you off forever. Part of my recovery is being open-minded, being thoughtful and compassionate towards others, even if it means going against all of the instincts that I have, because my instincts are no longer correct. I'm no longer in fight or flight. My life is no longer in danger nowadays. So all this learned behavior has served my friendships none. So I've changed in that, and I continue to try to change daily to try to be better. So I'm apologizing. I'm sorry to my friend Noelle and anyone else that I've forgotten during this apology phase. Back to the video. I'm gonna go get some water, eat some dinner, pat myself on the back for another day alcohol-free. Thank you for being here. If you've made it this far in the comments, please give me the date of your last drink. Even if it was yesterday, I'd like to know. Also, what was your favorite drink when you used to drink? I loved champagne. Not actually from Champagne. I'm not rich. Sparkling white wine. That's it for now. No drinking. Keep smiling. Namaste.